Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now here's your host, who thinks every partnership should include a content creation strategy, Sean Callanan.
G'day, I'm Sean Callanan and welcome to episode 422 of Sports Geek. This week I chat with Nicol. She's the CEO and Secretary General at the New Zealand Olympic Committee. Thank you very much for listening. You might be doing so at our website, sportsgeekhq.com. That's where you can find all the episodes, but more likely, you're listening to it on your favourite podcast platform or perhaps YouTube. I'd really appreciate it if you leave us a review. You can leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, a rating on Spotify or Pocket Casts. Let me know, what platform do you use? Also, don't forget, you can now follow us on YouTube. I'd love a subscription. All of our episodes now, we're putting up some of the archive and also some of the shorts will be on the Sports Geek YouTube. And as always, you can contact me via social media at Sean Callanan on most socials. Look for Sports Geek on YouTube and in your podcast player to find all our podcasts. As always, thank you very much for tuning in. If something in today's episode resonates with you or sparks an idea or something you want to tackle, I'd love to hear about it. Reach out to me anytime via email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or connect with me on the socials at Sean Callanan or at SportsGeek on most social platforms. But for now, please enjoy my chat with Nicol. Very happy to welcome Nicol. She's the Chief Executive Officer and Secretary General for the New Zealand Olympic Committee. Nicki, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Lovely to be here.
Not a problem at all. Really appreciate you coming on the pod. We did connect at Sport Next, and I'm always looking for new and interesting people in the world of sports business to come on the podcast. So it was good to finally lock in a time. I always start the podcast by asking people how they got their start in the world of sports business. What about yourself? How did you find your way into the world of sport?
Yeah, well, I think it's like many people, it's a bit of luck and it's a little bit of good timing. So I had forged a commercial career working for multinationals for many years, and it was time to really head back to New Zealand. We'd been living in Australia for the last 4 years, and from a family perspective, we just really wanted to be settled for high school. So we ended up in New Zealand, in Wellington, and using my commercial background, I sort of fell into New Zealand rugby. And so I came into New Zealand rugby as a CFO, were there 5 years. And from there, that gave me the opportunity to come into the Olympic world. So, yeah.
I don't want to go too quickly over this, but falling into an organisation like New Zealand Rugby, obviously you had an impressive corporate career. Was sport something you were looking at specifically, or were you looking at corporate? Was it just fortuitous, or was sport something you were looking to get into?
Yeah, so I think particularly for me, sport's been a big part of my life. My husband, my children, very active in sport. And so it's something that I'd looked at. I'd been involved in governance. I was on the Surf Life Saving New Zealand board. So I'd always sort of been, I suppose, sport adjacent, but from a career perspective, never found the right timing. And then, fortuitously, as you say, timing was good. I'd had a gap year, so I'd sort of been sitting at home wondering what I was going to do. And then, as timing fell for me, the role at New Zealand Rugby came up, and that was sort of really good alignment of my background, but also then bringing the commercial lens into the sport environment.
So at New Zealand Rugby, for those who know, and it's a global brand and well known across the world, you're in multiple roles there. Was that something you were trying to broaden your skill set, sort of being Chief Financial Officer, COO? Chief Transformational Officer, I should say, in that time there? Was that something you were trying to expand your skill set and sort of understand the world of sport a little bit better?
Probably a little bit reverse, because my previous roles in, international roles were all fairly broad and, I suppose, commercial leadership. So when the CFO role came up at rugby, it was a bit narrower. And I think once I got in there, it was the opportunity to then, broaden the portfolio and take on some other areas of responsibility. So again, getting involved and, getting your hands dirty and then, seeing the opportunities. And that's what shaped those other roles.
So 5 years at New Zealand Rugby, and in 2022 you came across to the New Zealand Olympic Committee. So the world rugby scene and the Olympic scene is vastly different. Some of the differences and the similarities in, I guess, moving to a new role in effectively a new sports landscape?
Yeah, so some of the differences are, I think, the breadth of sport. So rugby is our most professional and well-funded sport in the country. Its turnovers are sort of close to 300 million. So it is sort of far and away in New Zealand terms, the number one sport from a commercial perspective and professional, as in paying players and athletes. I now look after, we support about 50 sports across New Zealand, and going into games time, maybe 20 or 30 sports that we can have participating in an Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games. And for us, when you look at the diversity of those sports, we do have some really small sports, very limited funding or no funding, right through to rugby sevens, which is sort of at the higher end. So I think for me, that's the biggest difference, is you're working in a much different environment with your key stakeholders, our member sports.
And the thing is, as an Olympic committee, you are, managing and working with stakeholders. You're not running the sports, underneath. You are, you're working with New Zealand archery and New Zealand athletics and New Zealand basketball and the like. How is that different in that you're, lots of stakeholder management and you're trying to support them, but you're not actually running each program?
Yeah, and if we think about the Olympic cycle, every 4 years we're building to a pinnacle event, whether it's summer or winter Olympics. And for us, it's a really integrated system in New Zealand. We don't have the resources of some of the bigger countries, so we've got to work really smartly. So we have ourselves, we have High Performance Sport New Zealand, which is a government funding agency, and we have the member sports. And so for us, we're all working collaboratively together to get to, that day once every 4 years, to help the athlete do the very best they can to, make New Zealand proud, make them proud, and, do the results that we all are looking for. So, we have to work all across that supply chain. That's pretty fundamental. And so for us, partnering with both high performance sport and with our member sports is critical.
And so for you, you've recently just come out of a strategy cycle and released your strategy for 2025 to 2028. What was that process like? Is that something that is kicked off post every Olympics, or what was that process like? Can you take us sort of a bit behind the curtain on that?
Yeah, so it was the first strategy refresh that I'd been through in the new role, sort of 3 years in. And in an Olympic world, they tend to go in 4-year cycles. This one was quite interesting because we sort of have a look further ahead 8 years, being Brisbane, now kind of the closest we'll get to a home games in a long time. So we're really conscious having an Olympics. Well, Los Angeles on the one side of the Pacific and then Brisbane, the other side of the Pacific, is a really important window for us as an Olympic committee and what it might mean. And so that was really the context that was really, framing up what we wanted to achieve and, what our goals were over the next quadrennial. And so the strategy, it was a really good process. We started with our members. We got feedback from our sports, and then really with the board and my leadership team, we spent a little bit of time just trying to really drill in about, well, where do we really create value? Where is this sweet spot that we should be playing in as part of this integrated system, and then trying to make sure that we're preserving the real equity that is the essence of the Olympic team. And so that's sort of where we landed with the pillars and the enablers that we came up with.
And so the vision of that is to inspire pride and excellence in all New Zealanders, like that being the North Star. How do you then start getting into that execution phase on implementing that, and always sort of looking back at that as the key vision?
Yeah, and it probably came down to 3 key areas for us. One was sort of leading teams to games, which is the essence of the organisation. So we have Olympic and Commonwealth Games, so slightly different. Not all countries have both in the same jurisdiction, but we do, and I think that's a function of our size and scale. So that's really first and foremost, and for us that's supporting the athletes, that's telling the athletes' stories. It's all about the planning and logistics and preparation. The second key part for us is really how we connect and engage, and I think for us that's both our sports, but it's also our community. And if we want to inspire pride and excellence in all New Zealanders, it's how we connect with our community across New Zealand. And of course, social media and our digital content is a big, important part of that plank. And the last one is our legacy. And so always how we can keep enhancing our legacy. And this was also quite a rich sort of theme at rugby as well, as you can imagine. But if you think of sort of in New Zealand, the most iconic sporting moments over the last, 50, 60 years, a lot of them have involved Olympic or Commonwealth. games. And so for us, how we keep those stories alive and how we keep inspiring generations through our education programs or some of those other things are really important as well.
And another part that really came through in the strategy is, I guess, the connection of your strategy to New Zealand culture and the Maori framework in your decision-making process. And you've now been in two, organisations that are really embedded in that. Was that something that you've, I guess, further embraced and learnt more since you've returned back to New Zealand to work with two orgs that are have that as a real key pillar?
Yeah, and I think for Kiwis, when you go away, it's something that you really hold. You probably value more when you're away, when you can look back and just be really proud of our bicultural status that we have and the Indigenous culture that sort of permeates through, particularly a lot of our sporting teams. And so for us, for the Olympic world, it's been about a 20-year journey, but probably in the last sort of 2 to 3 games, we've really invested in what we call a culture of manaaki. And manaaki is a word that talks about respect, respecting the opposition, respecting the competitions we're at, respecting each other. And so how we try and bring this culture of manaaki together is, particularly at games time, there's probably a few rituals that we have. So the beautiful korowai, the cloaks that our flag bearers wear. There's a very, very formal process of handing over the the cloaks to the flag bearers. Every athlete in the Olympics gets a Māori stone, the green stone, pounamu, that they are inducted into the team with. And so some of those rituals have helped us really kind of create a real sense of connection. Because if you think, when we only have a very short window at games time to bring the team together, there's only 20, say there's 23 sports I think we had in Paris. And so suddenly you're trying to bring 200 athletes together and make them feel like they're one team when they're used to having a gymnastics team or a athletics team or a hockey team and so forth. And so what we've found is these rituals, really grounded in Te Ao Māori, have helped really bring that culture together. And so we have a haka that's been gifted to us that is ours for the team, and all the team learn it. And so as every athlete is welcomed, they're hakaed into the village and things like that, which I think is, for us, something that we're really proud of. And certainly from a engagement perspective from our fans, is something that has resonated amazingly as well.
And is it also something that, I guess, helps present New Zealand on the global stage? And that's what, the Olympics gives you, to give you that point of difference, to tell those stories, to tell more about, your culture, and sort of let people lean in, especially obviously New Zealanders, but also internationally, to have people learn a little bit more.
Yeah. And so, I think, in this organisation, we're passionate about sport, but we're also passionate about New Zealand. And if I think just back to Paris, we took with us a kapa haka group, so a Māori dance group, and they were involved in a lot of activities. We have a New Zealand House, which is a big area where people can come and celebrate and watch New Zealand athletes on New Zealand television feed. And as part of that, there were lots of events, and having this kapa haka group there to support us was fantastic. But what we also did, in partnership with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who supported the funding through their Cultural Diplomacy Fund as well, and Te Matatini, which is the big cultural festival here in New Zealand, we went out and did some cultural displays. And there's just some iconic photos that we have of the team under the Eiffel Tower doing a poi dance, or in the Parc de la Villette, just, with thousands of people seeing New Zealand culture there. And so for us, if we can amplify, the best of New Zealand as well as the best of our sporting talent, I think that's a real win for all of us.
And like you said, you sort of came into the world of sport with that commercial lens and looking at things to do things like expanding, I guess, the universe of sport, not just say, hey, we're talking about sport, or, this is a ball going in a hoop, or an arrow hitting a board, like to be able to have a wider canvas, to be able to talk to your partners, to say, this is why you should be a partner and come along the journey with New Zealand Olympic Committee. Has that made that job easier because you've got a little bit more canvas to work with? Definitely.
And I think, as you say, we're filling in that canvas and the richness of the stories that we're telling. And if I think back to just our social media, the engagement scores that we got were phenomenal. If you look at, let alone New Zealand, we were 4th in the total engagement across Meta and TikTok, and that's because we're telling these really rich cultural stories. We're telling really authentic stories, and, the team are working sort of behind the scenes to kind of get those, those unique moments that are shared back with other people. And so we feel it's really resonating. And for us, it's now how we sort of build on that really authentically to also then help, attract the sponsors and partners that come with us. And, that's a big part of our job as well.
No, exactly. I mean, because the thing is, and I think one of the things we were discussing at Sport Next is all of the rules and regulations around the Olympics and sponsorship and all the things you can and can't do. And there's lots of things you can't do. So you do have to get creative on, how you engage your partners both outside the 4 years and then how they can be a part of the the 2 weeks festivities, the 4 weeks festivities with the Olympics and the Paralympics. Do you think that's sort of part of having those cultural moments, but then that longer form storytelling and getting your partners involved has sort of helped you open up and sort of, I guess, get around some of those rules?
Yeah, you're right. The rights framework is quite tight, and we appreciate the context that the IOC operate as well. But for us, what we're also trying to do is smooth out the skyscrapers. So it's not we're on every 4 years or every 2 years with Winter and Commonwealth Games. It's how we tell a narrative all the way through. And so again, the relationship with the athletes and the athlete stories, and particularly for a lot of them, as I was saying, they're sports that aren't particularly well funded. So anything we can do to help raise the profile of the athletes is a bit of a win-win. And so that's been a big focus for us. Yeah.
And then also you have to have the agility also to, with 50 sports under you and then 23 sports representing, you don't know who's going to do a PB or have an inspirational, story or, take the world stage by storm for something they're doing on or off the track. How was that in Paris in planning those moments and, hey, we're going to do these things like get a great shot in front of the Eiffel Tower, but then also, oh, while that happened, how do we maximize that piece?
Yeah, and look, credit to the comms and content team. I mean, firstly, we have a selection criteria. So all the athletes that we are taking, we expect to be performing, very competitively. So that's, first and foremost for us. And then what we do is we have a commitment that we tell every athlete story. So we will make sure that across the team we've got representation from a content perspective to be able to capture those moments. And there were many. I mean, Paris for us was phenomenal. We finished 11th on the medal table, which 20 medals, 10 of them gold, which is our best ever. I think we had 8 gold medals back in 1984. So it's been a long time since we're past that score. And so for us, there were lots of special moments. But as I say, when we look back and look at the either TikTok or Insta feeds and what really resonated, it wasn't just the medal moment, it was the stories that sort of hung with it. It was Finn Butcher, who won the canoe slalom, putting his gold medal around his father's neck. And just that moment, which was, it was just a beautifully captured and that got, sporting moment of the year here at our recent Halberg Awards. It's those little things that just really resonated with people. And again, our culture is a big part of those stories as well.
So how do you, I mean, when you're in sport, there is always a scoreboard, there is always a medal tally, and you're always aspiring to trump that and get that higher. But what are some of the other success factors that you are looking at to go, we're inspiring a nation, we're seeing, more sign-ups with some of the NSOs because of what happens at Olympics? What are the other keys to success for you?
Yeah, one of the first things that we measure is actually how effective were our team. So the delivery of the games, because, we are entrusted to create the best high performance environment for those athletes. Once every 4 years, these athletes have been training, 8 years to get to this moment. And so, our job is to make sure that we don't stuff it up really. So we've got to make sure that is spot on. So that's the first measure that we really look at. And it's really important from both an athlete and the high performance directors of the different sports, giving us feedback to make sure that environment, whether it's the best medical support, the best psych support, the best, nutrition, uniform, cultural, all of that stuff has to be world class. And so that's kind of a big part of what we pride ourselves on and measure. From a sports system perspective, it's really around the sustainability. That's a big focus for us at the moment, and we know how tight it is. Our government, it's a really difficult environment. Everyone's trying to sort of pull in. And so we all are trying to work harder with the same or slightly less resource. And so I think that's the other big part for us, is around how we can support each other to be the most sustainable we can. And for us, the Olympic Rings has, I suppose, commercial value. And so what we're trying to do is leverage that to, be able to best support the sector as well, because we can't get to the games and not have the athletes there ready to go. So, we're all in it together.
Absolutely, and that becomes part of the, like you said, that angle commercially to partners to say we need you to support your community. In our world, that means supporting the sports and supporting the athletes, so you can get that win every 4 years, every 2 years, depending on which Olympics you're talking about. Is that sort of that longer term goal that you are pitching to partners to get on why they should be part of the Olympic movement?
Yeah, so our two big focus areas are one commercially, so just trying to build partnerships, and I think we've got this unique opportunity with Los Angeles and Brisbane to try and really get people involved. So that's kind of one side, and the other side for us is really around philanthropy, and that's quite a big part of our revenue profile. And we want to move from sort of cash coming in, which help invest in getting the team to the games, to actually having an endowment fund that we've always got that sustainability. So again, that's a big focus over this quad and the next, that we've sort of get to the end of Brisbane and we've actually got something there for the future generations. I can pass that on to someone else.
Exactly. I mean, you are looking at the future in 2028 and Brisbane. I mean, you're right. They're still pretty close. Like LA is just one flight and you're there. Yeah. And when you're in Australia and New Zealand, you just get on that flight and you're there. But those two next Summer Olympics at least, how are the plans coming along for that? And then that longer term piece of Brisbane being effectively in your backyard and being close and being same and similar time zone. What sort of opportunities do those two next Olympics offer?
Yeah, and I think for us, and this is where it does play quite nicely with our partnership with government and New Zealand Inc., and again, bringing a commercial side to it as well, is those are both really important markets. Both the North America and Australia are really important markets for us as a New Zealand entity first, but also as a sporting entity. And so for us trying to leverage what that means, we're looking in Los Angeles to partner with Culver City, which is a city probably about 10 miles in from Venice Beach, for those sort of just north of the airport, quite central, given how dispersed all the locations and venues will be in LA. And so for us, the New Zealand House has always been a really successful concept. We had 20,000 people through the New Zealand House in Paris, of which half of them were non-New Zealanders. So I think that kind of shows that monarchy, that hospitality that we do put on. And for us, it's a free offering. And so we kind of want to be a bit more ambitious in LA, and with a partnership with Culver City. They have a beautiful town plaza that we really want to take over and turn that into a way to showcase New Zealand's culture and do some of the things we talked about with our kapa haka groups or partnering with their community. And for us, those are some of the kind of legacy stuff that we're really excited about. Brisbane's a little bit further on. We haven't kind of got too far ahead of ourselves there, but we have seen the venues have been announced and some of the planning is getting underway there. But we have got one eye on that. And for us also, what's the opportunity if we were to host a Commonwealth Games? Maybe in 34 is probably our aspiration. So, that's a beautiful, package coming together all around the Pacific over the next next decade.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dispersed nature of LA will provide lots of opportunities for for everyone to sort of claim their little space and sort of because it won't be that that central location that a lot of Olympics are. The fact that there will be a lot of travelling and moving about, and will provide some of those opportunities activation wise and the like to showcase what you can do. So what were some of the, sort of going back to Paris, like what were some of the key wins for you, other than, not to diminish the tremendous gold medal tally? What were some of the key wins from your point of view?
Yeah, well, I think, we reflect on Paris sort of being really successful on the field, but also off the field. And we've talked a lot about on the field, but still a couple of ones I will call out. Dame Lisa Carrington winning her 8th gold medal, 9th medal overall was just phenomenal. 3 gold medals in her canoe racing. Dame Lydia Ko, getting her bronze, silver, and then getting the gold. A very special day. So there are a couple of big ones there. If we look at our medals, 74% of our medals were won by women. So again, I think that shows a huge investment in us and trying to really lift the gender equity gap that we've had, going back. And I think, reflects a huge amount of work in the sector. If I think about it from an Olympic perspective off the field, we were really successful with representation onto the IOC. Sarah Walker became a member in her own right. And again, these are prestigious role. Sarah's got about 30 plus years now, the right to participate there. So it is a huge honour for Sarah and for us. And Marcus Daniel was elected with Jess Fox as two of the athlete representatives on the Athletes Commission. So that was good because it means we get to be part of shaping sport with a front row seat there. And then the New Zealand House for us was just hugely successful. As I said, 20,000 people through a very small couple of courtyards at the back of the Champs-Élysées Marriott Hotel. But for us, that's where friends and family can come and celebrate and spend time with athletes and team, with other Kiwis, with other people who want to support Kiwis. And for us, showcasing that culture of manaaki with our guests is something that's really important.
And while the games are happening and, you're in Paris and you're activating New Zealand House, there's obviously, everyone back home tuning in, cheering on. How do you connect and stay connected with the, home base, whether it be, viewing parties, broadcast? How do you, I guess, connect the country? A lot of it is through the TV and through social, but is there ways to do it back home?
Yeah, so we've tried a number of different things, and probably COVID was Tokyo massive takeover and sort of New Zealand House in New Zealand. We did a number of commercial activations, commercial partners hosting breakfast and things like that. The time zone wasn't perfect for us. It was quite early in the morning for some of the finals and things like that, whereas Los Angeles will be quite different. So I think we will do much more in that at that time. We also do, the staff do their own, we can't take the whole team, unfortunately. So staff have their own kind of mini Olympics and events. And then we've got quite a lot of through social, but also kind of newsletters to our engaged fans and things like that, sort of sharing some of the behind the scenes stuff. Huge media representation, so really great support, both mainstream and sort of more niche and social driven groups who are up there also getting content and sharing it back as well.
I mean, there is a misconception outside the world of sport that when you're not playing, you've just got your feet up on the desk. There's not much happening. Not an Olympic year, right now. What are the key things you try to tackle in a non-Olympic year?
Yeah, well, because 2026 is quite a busy one with Winter Olympics in February, Commonwealth Games in July, and then the Youth Olympics in Africa in October. And so the vernacular sort of seems to talk about a non-games year. And I think we've sort of said, actually, that doesn't exist. We're kind of just still running pretty fast. And so for us, it's setting up for the quad. So a lot of planning for those 3 games next year. And we're still obviously planning for Los Angeles. And then the big ones are really around sort of locking in revenue and building kind of the commercial strategies that underpin how we're going to secure that revenue through the quad. So, those are kind of the big ones we're working on at the moment. It's also a chance for us to spend a bit of time on our people. Lots of personal development plans and those sorts of things, which is just good for us to reflect and just see where everyone's at and make sure that we are investing in our people because we ask a lot of them come games time.
Absolutely. You run that, marathon that's really a sprint in that time, but then realising that, there's other parts of the calendar that you want to develop people. And there's also, again, tackling that misconception with partners to think, we can only be engaged during these tournament periods, during these major events. And so they, it's not even in their thinking that, I should be thinking about the Olympics now and doing the appropriate planning.
Yeah, and our digital channels are pretty critical for that. And so, there's a lot of content domestically. If you think of national championships and other events and things like that, we also run events to create content. So 1 year to go, we'll be having a big event before the Commonwealth Games. So that is a lot of getting ready as well. So we don't have that big spike. We're always sort of keeping a base level of engagement. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. And like you said, there's athletes out there training right now for LA, for Brisbane, and you can start pulling some of those threads of those stories, so they're not complete unknowns when they're on the world stage.
Absolutely.
A lot to look forward to with all of those games next year, and then obviously 28 and onward. What excites you about the future for New Zealand Olympic Committee?
I think for me, it's just the pleasure and joy you get from seeing the athletes. They're just phenomenal people. I think they represent the very best of New Zealand, and so anything we can do to support them on that journey is just a privilege. But also, the responsibility comes with that, and so I think that's what motivates all of us. Everyone who works here is a huge, they're hugely committed to the kaupapa, the purpose of the organisation, and I think for us, we're really clear about what we need to do day in, day out, and it's pretty energising to get up and want to be part of it. So that's probably the first thing, and I think for us, making sure that we just don't leave anything, no stone unturned, because as you say, we've got to get everything right behind the scenes so the athletes have the best opportunity to do the best that they can, and so that kind of motivates us as well.
Absolutely. I mean, on that, we sort of spoke about, I guess, expanding the canvas before, culturally. A lot of what you do and what you're doing is supporting the athlete on their way up the mountain, on their way to the pinnacle. But then, post their Olympic success or post their Olympic journey, post their, achievement, which it is, you're an Olympian, it's an achievement. How much do you work with, I guess, past Olympians and the alumni to sort of, again, expand that canvas and have them be, guests at New Zealand House, have them be part of the story? How important is that for you as well?
Yeah, well, there's sort of two lenses to it. One is how we can use the athletes to commercialise. So, we have functions and we bring the athletes along. We pay the athletes to come and support us and just tell their story. So they're authentic and they're fantastic. And for some of our philanthropists, these are behind the scenes, wonderful experiences with, great ambassadors for New Zealand. So that's kind of a big part of it. But the other part is the work that we do with our athletes as part of the transition. We have two really great programs. One is our schools ambassador program. So the Olympians can go into schools and tell their stories. And so, they get to build their confidence in public speaking and something that they know very well. So it's very easy, but, how they engage with the community, and we've been very successful in transitioning a number of athletes into that. And then we've run a women's leadership program. What we really noticed a number of years ago was we had a number of we didn't have the pipeline of women coming into governance roles and things like that into the sporting sector. So we've run a number of women's leadership programs. We call it Wahine Toa, which is woman leader, and so that program's been developed. We've just actually over the weekend run our 5th cohort, and again we're just seeing remarkable results of how those women keep engaged back in the sector, and we see them pop up on football boards or athletics boards, tennis boards, governance groups, integrity commissions, all those sorts of things. And so for us, it's just a way to keep the people connected with the sports sector, and these are, as you say, great ambassadors that we want to keep connected with.
But it's also like, I've been lucky enough to speak a lot of athletes that have transitioned out of being an athlete to, their second career. And sometimes they don't realise the skills and the discipline that they had and learned as an athlete is just as applicable in the business world. So it is good to, help them, realise that, but then also get the added benefit of keeping him in the sport and solving a problem. So sounds like a terrific program.
Yeah, you're right. There's so many transferable skills, and it's just articulating that in sort of in a different language. Yeah.
Well, Nicki, I really do appreciate you taking the time for the podcast. I want to get to the Sports Geek closing 5.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Oh, look, I used to walk along to the local rugby ground every weekend. I just walk along myself and watch whatever the game was playing down there. But if I think back to one of the first major events I went to, showing my age now, 1992 though, the Cricket World Cup, which was co-shared between Australia and New Zealand, and with my dad, who I spent a lot of time going to sporting events with. We were there for the Aussie-New Zealand round-robin game where we won, so I remember that one quite well.
Yes, I remember that tournament quite well as well. You would have been to a lot of different sports events, and the food offerings at sports has changed over time. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food at a sports event?
Oh, goodness. Well, being a Kiwi, I will go with the pie. With sauce. With sauce. It
is an easy go-to, and it has been nominated often, so you're not alone there. Working in global sport, you never know when something's going to drop. What's the first app you open in the morning?
I'm going to go with Wordle, New York Times. So probably not the answer you're looking for. I have
No, that's fine. It's
a very good comms director who will have something on I'll have a WhatsApp if there's something I've missed.
How's your Wordle streak going? What's the current streak at?
It was 2 this morning. That was a goodie. So yeah.
Well done. Well done. Is there someone that you follow they might be someone you follow on social media, or an author, or someone like that you follow that the podcasters should give a follow to, and why?
Well, I hope they all now pick up the New Zealand team, which is great. So that would be awesome. But there's a fabulous women's rugby sevens player, Sheree Kaka, Kaka, and she was with the team that won in Tokyo. She was injured and couldn't go to Paris, but she has a beautiful style, and I think she brings a lot of joy just telling kind of fairly authentic New Zealand stories around sport. And so follow Sheree, she's great.
Absolutely. We'll put a link in the show notes. Lastly, and you can answer this personally, and you can also answer it from a New Zealand Olympic Committee point of view. What social media platform is your MVP?
I have to be Insta, given the age of my children. So that's where I end up. So making sure I don't miss what they've been up to. But also, the New Zealand team on Insta is pretty good too.
Absolutely. Well, Nicki, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I always ask listeners to at least reach out, say thank you if they've listened. What is the best platform for them to reach out and say thank you to you on?
Oh, look, LinkedIn's good. Getting the Nicol spelled correctly is probably the hardest part, but Nicki@olympic.org.nz is probably easier as well on email.
No, not a problem. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Hopefully we can connect in person like we did at Sport Next sometime soon. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
How is your team leveraging AI to better serve your fans? Set up a call with Sean to discuss how you could take advantage of this huge opportunity. To book, go to sportsgeekhq.com/AI. Have you checked out our daily sports business podcast? Search for Sports Geek Rapid Rundown on your podcast app. In 3 minutes, we keep you in the know across sports and technology.
Thanks again to Nicol. Please connect with her on LinkedIn. I will have links to Nicki and a few of the pieces of content that we did discuss in the show notes. As I always ask, please say thank you if you do connect. Tell her that you listened to the episode. You can find the show notes, as always, on the episode number, sportsgeekhq.com/422. One of the things I did want to discuss just a latest trend is the hesitate posting trend on Insta. I don't know if you've seen it, but a few of the teams and leagues have done we hesitated posting this, but in 2014 we confidently posted this. And I know memes overall are meant to be taken lighthearted, but as someone who worked really hard with many teams and leagues over those early years, and when I say early years, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, early years of social media, I can say confidently there was a lot of discussion and development behind those young digital voices in those early years. There was a lot of learning and iteration that happened. Not everything worked, but that's what early social media was. Looking for content, tone, style that resonated with the fans at that time. And obviously social media has evolved in that time for that reason. We figure out what works, we follow trends, we learn from other teams, we learn from other sports, we learn from other industries. We attend conferences like SEAT to keep pushing the envelope. For my digital team should always be looking to develop rituals that drive action. Those actions might be engagement, they might be comments, they might be more commercial, they might be ticket sales, they might be membership sales, they might be taking on board a sponsor's offer. My main takeaway is that amongst great digital teams, there's always been hesitation. There's always been that pause to check in with what your values are, what your goals are, and what you're trying to achieve. If you are going to post something and you don't know why, and you don't know what action you want, you should be hesitating. I saw that, and yes, there's a little bit of slam dunking on posts from 2011 and 2012. But I just want to tell you, they were very successful in 2011 and 2012, and they have helped form what is now more relevant and helped push the envelope to what is relevant in 2025. I look forward to that discussion continuing in Nashville at SEAT. later this June. Please join me with many Sports Geek alumni in attendance. You can use the code SportsGeek for a discounted registration. Go to cconference.com. You will not be disappointed. Until next time, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Thanks for listening. We'd love it if you'd forward this episode to a friend or colleague that might enjoy it. Don't forget you can now watch interviews on the Sports Geek YouTube channel. We're here to help our podcast listeners improve. Please get in touch and see how we can collaborate. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. All Sports Geek episodes are just a click away at sportsgeekhq.com.